The National Museum of China hosted a grand exhibition in 2021. The star of the exhibition was elegantly ensconced within a synthetic quartz in the form of a bronze vessel. The 100-gram lunar sample with the number 001 seemed like a message from the outer space, whispering the ancient murmurs of the cosmos to every visitor. Since its initiation in 2004, the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program has spanned over 17 years. 17 years. How time flies. Generations of space explorers have carried forward the torch united by an unwavering dream.
The quest for cosmic discovery is an unending journey. May the vast community of scientific workers and space professionals press forward on with victory in sight. To achieve the overarching goals of the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program, let us persist in our efforts to advance the global space industry and contribute further to the peaceful utilization of space. We will build a community with a shared future for mankind by offering more of Chinese wisdom, Chinese solutions, and Chinese strength.
Surpassing human limitations and embracing the boundlessness. This is the destiny that we share. The journey from which we must never retreat.
Xi Jinping, General Secretary and President of China, Chairman of the CPC Central Military Commission. In the morning of February 22, at the Great Hall of the People, met with the representatives from Chang'e 5 mission and visited the exhibition of lunar samples and lunar exploration. Xi has given high praise to the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program, especially to the achievements of the Chang'e 5 mission.
It's an honor for us to be seated beside the General Secretary. I believe this arrangement is the highest commendation for our national defense industry and for its scientific workers that the Central Committee offers.
When taking a group photo with conferees, President Xi made a special arrangement for the 92-year-old Sun Jiadong and the 81-year-old Luan Anjie to be seated beside him in a gesture of honor. They are the very pioneers of the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program, the chief designer and commander of the Chang'e 1 mission. From the moment he joined the space sector at 28, Luan Anjie has been driven by an unwavering aspiration to witness China's rise in the realm of space exploration. He participated in the development of China's first submarine-launched ballistic missile Zhu-Lang-1. He presided over the launch of China's first international space mission AsiaSat-1. At the age of 58, when he was appointed as the head of China National Space Administration, his thoughts were drawn towards the distant expanse of the deep space, towards those stars where the footsteps of the Chinese have yet to tread.
The emblem of CNSA was designed in that period. On both sides is the Earth, and there are 2 wheat ears. You can count them. Each ear consists of 21 pieces. It symbolizes that China's astronautical technology should move towards the 21st century. Our goal is to break the limits of the 3 cosmic velocities, to step beyond the Earth, and to journey out of the solar system.
Deep space exploration is recognized as the crown of human space technology. Only the US, the Soviet Union, Japan, and the European Space Agency attain this crown. Does China have this ability? Starting from 1956, China's space industry initiated with a blank canvas.
Ignition.
In just over a decade, China successfully launched its first artificial Earth satellite, Dongfeng 1, marking the first milestone of China's space industry. Then, after over 30 years of development, Yang Liwei's successful journey to space aboard the Shenzhou 5 spacecraft set a second milestone for China's space industry. As technological advancements accelerate, the gaze of humanity has turned towards the nearest extraterrestrial body, the Earth's sole natural satellite, the Moon. The Moon, humanity's most familiar celestial companion, still harbors a multitude of enigmatic mysteries yet to be unraveled. When was it formed, and how? To unravel the mysteries of outer space, The moon is the inaugural stepping stone. Lunar exploration is bound to become the third significant milestone in China's space industry.
Our journey to the moon, though empowered by China's technological prowess, still has much ground to cover before we truly embark on the voyage.
From dream to reality, Luan and Jie did not fight alone. He collaborated with a scientist and an aerospace engineer to fulfill their shared ambition. Ouyang Ziyuan is one of the first Chinese scientists to study meteorites and lunar soil. He is also a cosmochemist and a geochemist. In 1978, China received 1 gram of lunar rock from the US. It was Ouyang's team that conducted the research on it.
I propose that we only use 0.5 grams and preserve the remaining material. We conducted a comprehensive dissection of this lunar rock. At last, our team published 14 papers in total, based on just this 0.5 grams.
A mere 0.5 grams of sample contains very limited scientific information. Ouyang Ziyuan has always longed for China to go to the moon on its own. When Luan Enjie consulted him about the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program, Ouyang set forth his long-brewing scientific objectives.
We needed a map of the moon, and I made it. Since we started late, we must do better than our predecessors. Also, there are always a few things that others have not done, and they are of great significance. The purpose of this landing is to unearth more ancient records of the moon's history.
With scientific objectives in place, it's time for the space engineers to translate these goals into reality.
CCTV would like to have an interview with you.
Okay.
For Luan and Jie, the first choice for the chief designer is Sun Jiadong. Sun Jiadong is the winner of the 2 bombs, 1 satellite achievement medal, and the Medal of the Republic, from Dong Funhong 1 to BD1. Many of the firsts in the history of China's space program are closely associated with him.
Comrade Sun Jiadong was my former leader. For me, he is of great reputation. I invited him and promised to bear all the blame myself for this. I assured him that I will not escape my responsibilities. But I must make you the chief designer.
This was a tremendous challenge for me. A space project is not just about orbiting the Earth. Our ultimate goal is to enter deep space. Around the 1990s, China had already laid a certain foundation in space exploration. Consequently, our first step was to head towards the moon.
Sun Jiadong once said, "I'd bear all the blame if we fail to reach the moon. He'll shoulder all the responsibilities. But what to see, what to take, and what to do on the moon, Ouyang, they are your responsibilities." We were just like 3 lunatics who threw aside all personal desires to accomplish this national mission.
Who says high aspirations are exclusive to the young? Their yearning for outer space resonates with each other. After a heated discussion, a blueprint for lunar exploration soon emerged.
It consists of 3 steps: circumlunar orbiting, landing and probing, sampling and returning. I reported to Luan and Jie, but he said, "No, it's too long, make it simpler. The first step, orbiting. The second, landing. The third, returning."
These 3 steps opened an entirely new phase of China's space endeavors. In 2004, Chinese Lunar Exploration Program was officially initiated. It is also known as the Chang'e Program. Since then, ancient legends began to step into reality. In the era of space exploration, In November 2020, the third step of the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program was about to initiate. The Chang'e 5 probe was already sealed inside the fairing and integrated into the rocket. The Long March 5 rocket, once assembled, stands tall and strong, capable of sending an 8-ton probe to the moon. For today's China, the 400,000-kilometer journey from Earth to the moon is no longer a challenge. But just over a decade ago, when Chang'e 1 embarked on its mission, it was an unprecedented ultra-long distance that no Chinese had traversed before. What is more difficult than reaching the moon is to orbit the moon, to make Chang'e 1, a small satellite of the moon.
It may seem pretty easy, but all the countries in the world failed on their first try. This is because we must decelerate. If the timing of this process is not synchronized, it will fly past the moon. And if we did fly past the moon, it would deviate farther and farther to deep space. Second, if our aim is too precise. And if we head straight for the moon, we might end up crashing into it.
According to our estimation, for a distance of 400,000 kilometers, our margin of error could amount to over 100 kilometers. That's it.
At that time, we encountered a great challenge. The transmitting power of our satellite couldn't be further increased. But the signal strength received on Earth wasn't strong enough. The largest antenna aperture available was 12 meters. What should we do?
The timing of deceleration, the calculation of the orbit, the precision of tracking and control. Any minor deviation could lead to the failure of lunar orbit insertion to reach the moon. The project involves dozens of technical challenges and hundreds of research institutes. The 70-year-old Sun Jiadong and the 60-year-old Luan Anjia traveled across the country and scrutinized every minute detail. At that time, the chief designer Sun Jiadong visited us for an inspection. It was May 4th or 5 o'clock in the morning. He just sat on a small stool in the doorway, just sitting there and watching us do our jobs.
Luan and Jia spent a considerable amount of time questioning the validity of each payload. He inquired about everything we did. Sometimes we had to rack our brains to give a proper answer to his questions. His insightful questioning pointed out the hidden problems that we weren't aware of.
I didn't mince words with them. The schedules that needed to be met must be met. The tasks that should be done must be finished on time. The level of quality that was required must be attained without fail. A department even dared to begin its work without external funding. It had spent 20 million yuan without financial support, but that department had finished its job. This is our Chang'e 1 team. We did our jobs proactively and dared to initiate projects. We dared to shoulder responsibilities.
With neither prior experience nor a way to retreat, what they faced was a colossal project with myriad aspects, with every step being almost entirely a brand new challenge. Hundreds and thousands of scientists did their best to pave the way for a new journey.
My sole goal is to send our Chinese spacecraft to the moon, even if we throw a lump of iron on the moon. As long as it's accomplished by we Chinese, I'd say my dream has been fulfilled.
T-minus 60 seconds.
6 p.m., October 24th, 2007. China was about to take the first step into deep space.
T-minus 40 seconds.
Of the over 100 previous lunar exploration missions by humanity, only about half have been successful. Many countries' first attempt ended up in failure. Luan Anjia said that he was fully prepared for the possibility of failure.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Xichang 154 tracking normal.
Xichang 154, tracking normal.
A reliable approach is that Chang'e 1 underwent 10 orbital adjustments between the Earth and the Moon using a chain-swinging method to head towards the lunar orbit. The total flight duration would reach 13 days and 18 hours. On November 5th, Chang'e 1 approached the vicinity of the lunar orbit. The critical moment of deceleration was about to arrive.
As Chang'e 1 approached the lunar orbit, my heart raced with anxiety. during that pivotal moment. It was so terrifying that my hands were damp with sweat. At last came the good news. That Chang'e-1 was successfully captured by the moon. We all erupted into thunderous applause. I gave Sun Jiadong a big hug. We all burst into tears.
The Chinese Chang'e program punctuated history with an exclamation mark. The Chinese people achieved brilliant success in their first attempt at lunar exploration.
The strategy of self-dependent innovation played a decisive role in Chang'e program.
Perhaps this long pent-up passion and sentiment should not be measured in just 3 years, but rather in 3 decades, 5 decades, or even in a century. November 20th, 2007 at 8 p.m. China for the first time received scientific data from the moon. 6 days later, the China National Space Administration officially published the first image of the lunar surface sent back by Chang'e-1.
Why was I exhilarated? That's because we had surmounted a great obstacle and made a significant breakthrough, given our level at that time. I'm glad that we reached the international level. It's so delightful and gratifying. I feel proud of my country. The significance extends beyond the completed Chang'e-1 mission. It's very likely that we'll face countless challenges in the future. But now, a historical milestone has been established. Chang'e-1 has led China into an era of deep space exploration.
Xichang Satellite Launch Center received a new launch mission. The preparatory work, as always, went on meticulously and smoothly. Xichang, nestled in the valley of the Daliang Mountains, has been historically known as the City of the Moon. Interestingly, it is also the starting place for the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program.
Attention, all units. T-minus 5 minutes.
On the journey to outer space, China has never stopped its march, progressing steadfastly and rapidly.
Attention, all units. T-minus 4 minutes.
In 2010, Xichang welcomed Chang'e-2, a sister of Chang'e-1. The main objective of this launch is to pave the way for the second step of the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program, landing. It also verified certain technologies and gained a clearer view of the landing site.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ignition.
This time, the rocket directly sent Chang'e-2 into the Earth-Moon transfer orbit. 5 days later, Chang'e-2 was successfully captured by the Moon. The following task was to shoot the Bay of Rainbows. The Bay of Rainbows would be the intended landing area for Chang'e-3. The high-resolution images of the lunar surface could provide guarantee for subsequent landings. After that, it adjusted its orbit to capture China's second global moon map.
The global moon map captured by Chang'e-1 has a resolution of 120 meters, while the one captured by Chang'e-2 had a resolution of 7 meters, approximately 20 times higher than Chang'e-1.
It is the global moon map with the highest resolution in the world to date. However, Chang'e-2's mission didn't end there. At that time, Wu Weiren was the chief designer. After the Chang'e-1 mission, Luan Injie and Sun Jiadong handed the baton to the younger generation of space professionals. The mantle of the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program was entrusted to the hands of the young.
Actually, I hesitated for a long time before finally accepting this job. Sun Jiadong and Luan Injie, these two predecessors, made a remarkable success with Chang'e-1 and earned an international reputation. Taking on this task could bring immense pressure. I hesitated for several months. But after all, for our generation we have this consciousness to heed the party's arrangements and to comply with the nation's demands. So at last, I accepted this mission with pleasure.
As an expert in space communications, since the 1980s, unwavering has been dedicated to breaking the bottleneck of deep space tracking and control. When discussing plausible plans for the Chang'e-2 mission, Wu believed that we should take a step further based on lunar orbiting of Chang'e-1.
Chang'e-1 has already done a great job. Chang'e-2 must innovate. Then how to innovate? Exploring the moon is not enough. We must carry out more distant deep space exploration.
After it exited the lunar orbit, Chang'e-2 headed for the Earth-Sun Lagrange Point 2, which holds great astronomical significance. At the time, it would be 1.5 million kilometers away from Earth. After that, Chang'e-2's target changed into an asteroid named Titatis, with the designation 4179.
The orbit of this asteroid is uncertain. We conducted calculations and simulations. At last we predicted that the encounter would take place at a distance of 7 million kilometers. 7 million kilometers away from Earth. Can you imagine the difficulty?
7 million kilometers, nearly 18 times the distance between the Earth and the Moon. At the time, none of China's spacecraft had ever reached this far. It was an unprecedented challenge that involved complicated orbital determination and cutting-edge deep space tracking and controlling technology, the result of which could determine whether China had the capability to venture beyond the Earth-Moon system and to explore the more distant depths of space. As Chang'e-2 was traveling in space, a new deep space station in Jiamu's had just completed its infrastructure construction. In a valley surrounded by dense forests, a 66-meter aperture antenna was erected. This was Asia's largest and most sensitive tracking and controlling antenna at that time.
In 2012, this antenna was erected. After May, relevant equipment began to arrive progressively, and then we started to work on the extended mission of Chang'e-2. We carried out tasks while installing and testing. We were so anxious. Linhai, downlink status transition complete. Telemetry signal normal.
Once a spacecraft leaves the Earth, it would become a small boat in the vast ocean. The Deep Space Network is just like a distant lighthouse that calibrates the direction of the spacecraft. Under the guidance of the Jiamu's Deep Space Station, Chang'e-2 was getting closer and closer to the asteroid Titatis. However, the associated risks were also increasing.
If Chang'e-2 collided with this asteroid, we would get no useful scientific data at all, and Chang'e-2 itself would also be damaged and deviate from its orbit due to the impact.
Someone said that it's just like shooting a flying mosquito with a rifle from 10 kilometers away. A minimal error may result in a wide divergence. We must ensure Chang'e-2's trajectory is totally controllable.
Our team played an indispensable role. For instance, if the spacecraft's orbit deviates or if the predetermined instructions cannot be executed, it still receives signals from the large aperture antenna with strong power, even if it strays a bit. Linhai, downlink status transition complete.
Linhai, probe tracking complete.
On December 13, 2012, Chang'e-2 passed by the asteroid Titatis at a distance of only 3 kilometers. This fleeting encounter and transitory remembrance left a memorable moment in the history of China's space exploration.
This was our nation's first time to observe such an asteroid with such a precision. Upon viewing this image, everyone was extremely delighted. Some were so moved they shed tears. We accomplished 3 missions with only 1 satellite. We achieved 1 probe, 3 tasks, which saved the country the cost of rockets and satellites. The international community said that the Chinese had maximized the potential of Chang'e-2.
To this day, Chang'e-2 is still wandering in the deep space. Perhaps one day, it may come near Earth again. Chang'e-2's success verified China's capabilities in deep space tracking and control. The problems that once troubled Luan Unjie and Sun Jiadong have seen significant breakthroughs in just a few short years. The second step of the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program, landing, has entered a critical stage.
3, 2, stay still.
Jiayong has loved the stars since childhood. After graduating, he fulfilled his dream by becoming an aerospace engineer. But to his surprise, in the past 10 years, his main job is to build a vehicle. The Chang'e 3 mission is the second step of the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program. However, the second step is not a mere continuation of the first, but a significant leap forward. It involves landing on an extraterrestrial body, as well as patrols and scientific explorations. Such endeavors were groundbreaking in the history of China's space exploration. This mission involves numerous new technologies, with many projects starting from scratch.
When I first took on this task, it was also a blank slate for me. First, I had to do research about Soviet lunar rovers, American Mars rovers, armored vehicles, tanks, and even agricultural tractors, to find relevant technologies.
The first challenge that Jia Yang's team faced was the lunar rover's wheels. The lunar environment is vastly different from that of the Earth. The sand on the moon has significant differences. Due to wind erosion, the sand on Earth has been shaped into smooth particles. The moon has no atmosphere and thus no wind. So lunar sand particles are sharp and abrasive. Ordinary wheels could not last long before being worn out quickly. To solve this, Jia Yang's team tried and verified many solutions.
For over 3 years, we conducted many ground tests to determine the optimal wheel design, with the strongest driving force. It's a structure similar to a window screen. It allows soil particles to pass through the net. The design is lightweight and still remains elastic. Although a sparrow is small, all its vital organs are present.
A lunar rover involves 7 or 8 subsystems, each of which needs to be developed and perfected. After assembling these subsystems together, whether the overall performance meets the standard is another challenge. A more realistic and harsh environment is needed for the testings. The field test base should be established in somewhere as arid and desolate as the moon.
To select a test site, we traveled about 20,000 kilometers and visited every desert in northwest China, including the uninhabited areas. At last, we focused our attention on the Kumtag Desert, in the northwest of Dunhuang.
In the desolate desert, a row of makeshift houses was set up, and the equipment was quickly put in place. Every monotonous day, the lunar rover walked on the sand and stones, again and again. Every time a malfunction occurred, the team had to optimize their design.
Approximately 10 kilometers away from our test site, wolf tracks were detected. For safety reasons, 4 red flags were placed at the 4 corners of the test site. We stipulated that anyone must return at once if the flags are invisible. It's an unforgettable memory for me. Making a lunar rover is akin to raising a child.
From conception to birth, all the painstaking efforts are made to cope with unknown dangers on the journey ahead. In 1966, this was the first successful soft landing on the moon in human history. The Soviet Luna 9 ejected airbags before landing, which bounced on the lunar surface to protect the safety of the landing module. It was a hard-won victory. After failing for 11 consecutive times, the U.S., before the Apollo manned moon landings, also experienced 6 failures before breaking through the lunar soft landing technology. Soft landing on an extraterrestrial body is a high-difficulty challenge in space technology, and a crucial threshold that cannot be bypassed in deep space exploration. The Chang'e 3 probe, tasked with China's first lunar soft landing mission, was deeply troubled by this challenge from the very beginning of the project.
Since we had never landed on an extraterrestrial body before, I felt a great deal of pressure at the time. How to ensure that it could land smoothly and safely on the moon without overturning. Our entire plan was dedicated to solving this problem.
Landing on an extraterrestrial body hinges on the effectiveness of deceleration. To achieve this, various methods have been conceived, including using airbags, sky cranes, and landing legs. Among the three options, airbags would limit the weight of the lander, and the sky crane technology is very complicated. China decided to adopt the landing legs approach, which, however, presented many thorny issues as well. In 2006, Lan Xiaowei from Xi'an was notified that he would be in charge of a critical technology for the Chang'e 3 mission. Previously, his expertise had primarily been in rocket engine systems, which are different from the systems used in the probe. The reason he was selected this time was due to the necessity of the use of an engine for deceleration in the landing legs approach. On Earth, parachutes can be used to slow down the landing. But on the Moon, there's no atmosphere, so reverse thrust from engines is the only option.
A core issue in this process is to ensure that we have a variable thrust propulsion system. So engines with variable thrust capability are essential.
It's like driving a car, where the speed can be adjusted according to my need, and I can shift gears at any time. We required the engine to operate with continuous variable thrust within the range from 7,500 newtons to 1,500 newtons. Adjusting the thrust level as needed.
Variable thrust engines became the first key technology to ensure a soft landing. But at that time, China did not have any ready-made variable thrust engines.
At that time, there was a great deal of uncertainty about this mission. We had no confidence at all. We were given 2 years to solve this problem. If we succeeded, our work would be integrated into the mission's design, but if we failed, then essentially this path would become impassable. The distance between the two holes. Is it enough?
In just 2 years, Lan Xiaowei's team started from scratch. They studied diligently, making repeated attempts and corrections. Eventually, they broke the bottleneck of several key technologies of the variable thrust engine. The Lunar Landing Challenge of Chang'e 3 saw a glimmer of hope. But for an engine's research, designing was only the first step. More important is to discover problems in the design through continuous testing.
In actual conditions, the surroundings are a vacuum, so it is necessary to create a simulated vacuum test condition, which involves placing the engine inside a vacuum chamber for extended endurance assessments.
However, the existing vacuum testing bench did not meet the requirements. What to do? The only solution was to construct a new one. In 2009, at a construction site at the foot of the Qinling Mountains, people worked around the clock. With only 4 years left before the scheduled launch of Chang'e 3, the team in charge of building the engine testing bench did not dare to waste a single day of time.
The requirements approved in April 2009 were to be completed and put into production by September 2009. It was a huge technical challenge, though we didn't know if it was feasible or not. Once we started, we were all confident and full of determination. We didn't make it in September 2009, but on October 18, 2009, the testing bench successfully passed the final evaluation. We made it in just over 6 months.
It typically takes 1 to 2 years to build a high-specification engine testing bench. The ability to put into production at an unimaginable speed of just half a year is driven by the team's strong sense of responsibility.
LA2 normal.
LA1 open.
Number 9 initiate.
Number 12 initiate.
20 seconds.
1,400.
The development process of the engine involves continuous iteration between theory and practical testing. We went through numerous setbacks. At the most difficult times, the engine would fail in just 10 seconds, with several units burned out. After each test, the team would analyze the results at once, and then make improvements accordingly.
Again and again. After over 50 test firings, we eventually achieved a huge breakthrough in the variable thrust engine technology. It provided the most critical assurance for lunar soft landing. But that was far from enough. Even with the variable thrust engine to slow down the probe steadily, the final descent phase of landing still poses risks.
It would be problematic if it landed in a crater. The probe would probably crash. The landings carried out by the Soviet Union were almost blind landings relying merely on luck, thus it failed multiple times.
How can we ensure the probe descends with its eyes open? We used multiple safety devices that are similar to 4 scouts with exceptional vision, observing the ground during the descent to find a flat landing spot. Among the 4 scouts, the last one has the most arduous task. When there are only 100 meters above the lunar surface, Chang'e 3 will hover for a moment, allowing the scout to make a final survey.
The probe would hover for some time to assess the landing area, making sure there are no rocks or small hillocks.
We were required to identify obstacles, such as rocks or craters, that are 0.2 meters high. We must detect those 20 centimeters high rocks and craters and get rid of them.
For the team led by Xu Rong, the first challenge in the development process was the final 100-meter hovering, which was extremely short, lasting only 10 seconds.
The 10-second window allowed for only 3 chances of operation, each could last for 3 seconds. Within these 3 attempts, if we couldn't obtain the desired data, the probe would perform a blind landing regardless of the conditions, as the fuel supply would not sustain any further delay. How to achieve this? We had no idea at that time. We were all confused.
At the test site of Tongji University, wooden boards of various sizes were used to simulate the undulations of the ground as seen from above. This setup was used to verify the accuracy of the laser imaging technology.
We did a lot of experiments, in which the conditions of the ground were continuously altered. The system's performance was evaluated to see if it could accurately identify the safe touchdown zone. The size of this rock is equivalent to the size of a laser spot, about 20 centimeters in diameter.
Nonetheless, no matter how precise the static tests on the ground are, they cannot fully account for the shaking of the probe during the actual operation. It's just like taking photos on a bumpy car, which is hard to get good imaging quality. The countermeasure that Xu Rong's team came up with can be summed up in one word: swiftness.
If we were quick enough, any platform sway could be considered negligible for the imaging system. As everyone knows, with a camera, when capturing something moving at high speed, you need to set a very fast shutter speed. It doesn't matter if your hand shakes. We can simply speed up the shutter. So, we proposed a solution using 16 beams, equivalent to 16 lasers working simultaneously. This approach enhanced the efficiency by 16 times, making it extremely fast. It enabled us to capture a 3D image within just 250 milliseconds. Back then, our team had just 15 people. We had worked on this project for about 4 years. All of our hard work came down to the last few seconds of the lunar landing and a single image of the lunar surface conditions.
Over 4 years, and through countless trials of varying sizes, the 3D laser imaging technology passed the evaluation. However, there were still concerns. What if the image isn't captured clearly? For this, there was a final safeguard: landing legs.
Our landing legs were made of tensile materials. The shock-absorbing rods within the legs could automatically extend when subjected to force. This technology did not exist in our country before. Eventually, we collaborated with a research institute of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. We conducted countless experiments that tested thousands of these rods. After a thorough comparison, we finally selected the appropriate material for the landing legs. The Chang'e 3 mission incorporates many applications of the newest technology in our country. Breakthroughs in new technology cannot be bought or requested.
From the first lunar rover to the breakthroughs of soft landing technology, the entire development process was permeated with continuous innovation. However, innovation is, by no means a sudden miracle, but the result of enduring countless ordinary days and moments of struggle. It is the light that emerges after endless, devastating failures. It is precisely those trivial details of life that make the brilliant moments of history.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition.
"12 days after the launch, on December 14th, people gathered in Beijing Aerospace Command and Control Center to wait for the key moment of Chang'e 3's lunar soft landing.
Chief designer Wu Weiren entered the hall and asked me, "Where is Xu Rong?" He said, "We've conquered 380,000 kilometers. The last 100 meters count on you."
Chang'e 3 was still traveling at a speed of over 2,000 kilometers per hour when it was preparing for the lunar landing. Whether it could decelerate smoothly depended on the performance of the 7,500 Newton variable thrust engine.
It was the most anxious moment, although it was just a few hundred seconds. I felt as if a whole day had passed.
Initiating 7,500 Newton engine. GNC switching to main deceleration mode. Power descent starts.
Over approximately 10 minutes, the variable thrust engine performed excellently, and then the probe entered the hovering phase.
GNC switching to hover mode.
I heard that. We entered the hover phase, which meant that our laser 3D imaging sensor had begun to function. Actually, only 3 seconds had passed before Chang'e 3 started to descend.
Changcheng reports.
GNC switching to obstacle avoidance mode.
Later, they reported that it had translated 5 meters to avoid a huge crater and landed at a safe site.
GNC switching to slow descent mode.
Changcheng reports. Shutting down 7,500 Newton engine.
Chang'e 3 has landed safely.
Around Valentine's Day on February 14, at first, we received its carrier signal, which was just like an ah, but without any content. Then, after a while, the telemetry signal that we received became surprisingly normal. We found the rover in good condition. That moment evoked a feeling reminiscent of a poem by Du Fu. 'Tis said the Northern Gate was recaptured of late. When the news reached my ears, my gown was wet with tears. Staring at my wife's face, of grief I find no trace. Rolling up my verse books, my joy like madness looks.
I've been retired for a long time, but whenever I see the moon, on a clear night, I just stand there. I say, we have sent something up there. It isn't visible, but I can see it with my heart.
For those involved in the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program, the moon in the night sky has already become an inseparable part of their lives. Every time they think of it, a sense of warmth would overwhelm their heart. There is a kind of love that transcends the petty self, making the longest journey no longer agonizing. All efforts are joyful, and all waiting is worthwhile.
我愿变成一颗恒星，守护海底的秘密。It's magic, it's magic，照亮你的心。To your eyes，有多远的距离？穿过人海，别停下来，趁现在还有期待。每当你向我走来，告诉我星辰大海。
3、2、1，点火！起飞！
盛开在黎明。趁现在还有期待。